Welcome to War of the Weirds, a war between friends for a stranger to discovery, the greater hands of victory. Sometimes in war there is collateral damage, and we must take account for what we've missed in the previous battle. So prepare yourselves for this week's episode. Collateral damage. BOGO grave plot.
Hello, and welcome to War of the Weirds. I'm Brewy.
And I'm Mystic.
And we're here telling one another strange, true stories from our bizarre world. And I told the story of Screamin Jay Hawkins, the singer of I Put a Spell on You, and his truly bizarre life. And Mystic recently told the story of the nuclear Boy Scout, a Boy Scout who, not involved with the Boy Scoutness, also developed a nuclear reactor.
But also sort of because of the Boy Scoutness, because a lot of the information on how to do that was in pamphlets that were provided by the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
So,
because there was a specific merit badge involving nuclear power.
Yeah, atomic energy. Yeah.
Atomic energy, yeah.
So he's like, I'll just build a reactor.
But yeah. We're
we
letting
both,
you know ahead of time. I got more on my topic a little bit, and so does Mystic. But this episode, it's gonna go off the rails. So we already go off the rails a little bit at the beginning of each episode.
I think that's fun.
This is off-roading for the majority of the episode. Letting you know ahead of time.
Yeah.
If you don't like it and you continue to listen, you got a poopy brain.
Yeah,
Just letting
you can't give us a bad review because you know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
So, although as we learned,
from
you can do that, but you shouldn't.
Yes, from our Spoils of War episode, which I think will come out before this.
Who knows? Maybe it'll be after this, and then time is just influenced by future events. Whoa!
Sorry, existential crisis. That's how I react to it.
Yeah.
But anyway, what were you talking about before we started recording?
Yeah. Okay. So I was talking about an ARG that Brumi and I had talked about weird stuff to each other, even off the record.
Yeah, and then I was like, "Fuck that."
Yeah.
Fuck that record. But ARG being, what is it? Alternate reality game? Yeah. I know it's game, but it's alternate or something. Yeah, I think.
So it's a game that sort of there are tons of different ones, and a lot of times they seem like pretty underground or like it's not always a hugely publicized thing because usually in that game they're acting as if this is real life.
Yes, it's a fake thing that is going on that the people putting on the fake thing are pretending it's real. And it's like, I don't know what the most famous, you were talking about one for like The Dark Knight, the Batman movie.
Yeah, there was one that came out like a year or so before, I think it was a year before the Dark Knight was even announced. And so like 2 years before the movie came out, but it was like these fake posters or news like clippings or something that would like pop up around different towns. And if you like go to find out more about them, you can eventually, after a lot of research, so you have to be pretty, diligent, you can come across this like fake news source, but like for Gotham City. But it's not overtly obvious that this is for Gotham and therefore for this ARG. And so you like it seems like you're just like learning about these killings or murder and all these horrific things that are happening that were designed to lead up until like the introduction of the Joker into Gotham City before the movie. So like some more backstory on that. But instead, like because it was so obscure, it just seemed like a bunch of these, like there was just a bunch of crime that wasn't being reported or something. And like in this town, I don't know. It was very... Yeah. So it's supposed to be for advertisement, which is what a lot of these things are. Like the real life, that's how you come across and like look up the ARG online is like you see something in real life that triggers your interest in it, or like, what is this? This is unexplainable. And one of the ones that happened in my city, which apparently is common, was this orange bike. Like it was a spray painted orange, like the entire thing, the tires, the spokes, the seat, handlebars, everything. It wasn't just like the frame was orange, like everything was orange. And they would like pop up in like at busy intersections. They'd just be like leaning against a telephone pole or like the crosswalk pole or whatever. And for like weeks and months they'd be there, and like finally, like I remember like Googling like orange bike, and then found where Google autocomplete or suggestions show where a lot of other people have searched this. And it turns out it's like, and it will take you to a gym called, I think I'm not even gonna say the name of the gym. I don't want to advertise for them.
Yeah.
But
orange something.
Yeah, orange something gym. It has nothing really to do with the bike. It was just a marketing ploy of like putting all these bikes up so that it would generate buzz and people would talk about it and look it up and then find the website for this gym that's opening.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I don't care about this. But unless you're super excited for a 150,000 gym to open in your neighborhood.
You remember, I'm sure you do, the Richmond TV ferry? Or whatever?
No,
the
but
guy with a TV for a head that dropped off TVs at people, like old TVs at people doorstep.
Yeah, this sounds. I didn't know about the TV head, but I did hear about the TVs being delivered, or like, yeah.
Yeah, the guy had a TV because people have like the cameras that are
door ring cameras and stuff. Yeah,
yeah. So people have images of it's a guy wearing all black that has an old TV for a head. So basically, some guy did it in their neighborhood in Richmond, and it turned out like this is like unconfirmed. It's just a bunch of coincidences, but it turns out it was just a YouTuber that did it, and then just like they wanted to do the ARG thing. They did it, and then they were on the local news because they were, quote unquote, they were one of the people that got a TV, so it's like a freaky thing that happened to them, and they agreed to speak to the news. And the news was interested because it's a weird story. Yeah. But then
that's funny. You talk about something and then make yourself like a star to be like, in the media, and you're like, it's kind of genius.
But I think they also just got in trouble for it because
probably
it wasn't publicized that it was them, but I believe they were in trouble for it because they just people have to throw away, like the police had to get like rent vans to get all these fucking giant TVs.
It costs the taxpayers money.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they got in some legit trouble, and nobody gives a shit about their YouTube channel. So
there's one that was this very interesting.
Barely Sociable is the person that tipped me to that. That's a YouTube channel. Just wanted to throw it out there.
Nice. There's a YouTube channel called Inside a Mind.
Yes.
That I really, really like, and they talked about one recently that all these. The appeal is that it's so creepy. So it's like this has gone on for months, I believe, that like this guy has been, I think he has a Twitter account, but also YouTube page or YouTube, channel. And like he'll upload, he's uploading pictures and stuff about like, or videos of him like in his garage, and he's like, I'm being followed, like they know I'm in here, like I have to hide, whatever, and all this stuff. And it seemed like sort of like a paranoid delusions, and this goes on for so long of like these little videos and stuff, and they gained a lot of traction. And it's like, okay, does he think he's being followed? Is he really being followed? Is this an ARG thing? Like what's happening? But then somebody came forward, which apparently is all part of it, he's an actor, but he came forward and he's like, so my friend showed me this YouTube channel of this guy who's like, thinks he's being followed and stuff. This is like, he's in my house. Like this is my garage. And he like walks around and shows like, these are our property. And like when he thinks that someone's outside the garage or he's hiding or he's like in the attic because they're in the house or something, that means he's in our house and that's us he's talking about. Like he's, and it becomes like this whole creepy, freaky thing. But it's like that. It took months and months, and I thought that was pretty well done. I mean, it's all staged. Everybody's safe. There's nobody in trouble. But like, they're still perpetuating this as if it's true. For this series. But I thought that was pretty interesting because it was like, people were on board with it for so long, thinking this guy's just like crazy or doing something for attention.
Well, the thing about it is, I don't even know why people really found that interesting before the twist, because that is a thing that happens on the internet. There are plenty of people making plenty of videos. Like, I had a topic about gang stalking, which is not a real thing that happens, but people's belief in it, where they're being stalked by basically everybody.
Right. Yeah, which, the government's paying them to surveil you, or they just do it or whatever, for whatever reason. Or,
There are a ton of YouTube videos, people talking to cameras, that are just like, they're stalking me, see? And they just flip the camera, and there's somebody down the street that apparently, according to them, is following them. There's tons of videos of people with delusions of many kinds on the internet. So to me, it's odd that it even gained any interest. This person,
and I think, I'm sure if like on the inside of mine, because I think they've done like since done an like updated episode, but where they have talked about because I think it was linked to a Twitter account. And just the fact that they weren't responding to the tweets, to replies and stuff like that, and like it seemed like it was more staged because they weren't actually going to engage.
Well, and it's obviously built to gain interest, so there's probably like little hints of something more throughout or whatever. Yeah.
And I don't know all the details of that, but I thought it was a pretty interesting thing. But this led to the idea of like, why do people care about conspiracy theories? Like. So, I mean, for example, just like with QAnon, that's a whole huge thing right now. And I actually first heard of QAnon from you, something you were like a conspiracy theory or something that you shared, or
that I knew about. I never
that you knew about. Not that you were like, not that you tried to convince me that this was true. No, that you were just like, hey, isn't this weird and crazy that people think this? And I was like, yeah, that is. And so like I mean, even with like the COVID vaccine, I know people are like, they're injecting nanobots and stuff to track you and stuff like that.
Yeah, Bill Gates is injecting microchips into your penis. Don't worry about it.
Even if that's true, why would they do that? Like, take that to a logical conclusion. Like, they don't need to do that, because you have a phone, and most people upload their Facebook status every 10 seconds, like going to eat ice cream, got ice cream, my stomach hurts from eating ice cream. Like, if the government wanted to collect data on you, there's tons of other ways they can do it.
Your phone
and there's less
trackable,
nefarious ways.
Like, your phone is trackable. If your phone is on, you can be tracked by the government.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Because it just has the GPS tracker, and it's not as if, like, they couldn't get to that if the phone's on.
Right.
It's like,
right.
Not that there is somebody watching you at all times. It's just that they have the option.
Right.
But yeah, it's a funny thing to focus in on, and it's just.
And then the arguments I've heard from that are like, well, you can not have a phone if you don't want to, or you can be off the grid, but like if it's in your blood. Like, okay, but why would this be the way that the government goes about it? Why would it not just be like in the water, and they just, or why would it not be just like a vaccine or something, that a shot you get in the hospital? Why would it be something so controversial that so many people are against getting anyways? Like, why is this the way the government's going to do it in this very outrageous and highly publicized way?
There are already people that are not interested in getting vaccines. You know what I mean?
Right.
And but the argument with the phones doesn't check out, because there are already people not doing vaccines otherwise. Right. So the phone thing doesn't matter already.
Right.
Because there are people that don't have phones, but there are people that don't do vaccines already. So the argument is about whether the vaccine is actually a thing or not.
Right. Right.
Or if they're tracking you with it or not.
And then the biggest question is like, why would they even care to track you? Like, I'm sure the government has tons of like surveillance footage, and I know like face recognition and cameras is a thing right now, and like whatever. But like, I mean, why? What is it? Some sort of like ego that's like the government wants me? Like, you're so important that like the government wants to keep up with you?
I think. Their argument is generally like they're going to track every single person they have. You know what I mean?
But there's no way that everybody can keep up with that.
or
like
whatever.
There's too many people for that to even be monitored. Like,
yeah.
And why would they care?
Here's the thing. Government tracking everything you do, that's already happening.
Exactly.
It's already fucked up. It's already beyond fucked up what's currently happening.
Right.
The amount of tracking that they can do and do at any time.
Right.
People love or hate Edward Snowden, but he did reveal just like a bunch of people at the NSA just going through fucking emails and just being like, yeah, isn't that funny? That isn't she a whore or whatever?
Right,
Just random.
Like, you gotta see this chain email this guy sent. Like, are you know, it's like, I mean, I
said that to be an example of like a specific guy being a pig in the NSA. If a woman wants to sell their body, I don't care.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I just don't like, I don't get why. I mean, or the other one with like the inauguration. That was another thing that the March 4th was like, that's the true inauguration day. That's when Trump will be sworn in again and blah, blah, blah. And like, you look into things like that and you're like, okay, what are they even talking about?
I mean,
and
it's just denial.
Apparently,
I don't want to believe what reality is, so I'm going to invest in this non-reality that a bunch of people have agreed to invest in with me, so I feel like less of a crazy person. Not that I'm calling it crazy, but it's like...
Right. Yeah. You're
delusional. It's not truth.
Yeah. I mean, that's the definition of delusional. Yeah, and like, so I looked into it. I was like, what is the March 4th thing? And then apparently, I don't know all the details, nor do I care really, because it's absurd. But for some reason, way back in history, I think it was like after Roosevelt or something, I don't know, like the inauguration was done on a different day than it was originally like legislated to be. And since then, and that was like, originally it was supposed to be March 4th. And I don't know if there was like somewhere it's like legally it was that or whatever, but that was like traditionally the day that it was done. For whatever reason, 80 years ago or more, they did it in January and they've continued to do that. Yeah. And so the thought behind like the argument is that like people are making, and by people I mean like QAnon, the argument is that not only is Biden's inauguration invalid because it wasn't done on the official day, which is supposed to be March 4th. So there was a chance that Trump would truly become president if sworn in that day or whatever. But also that every president before then has not been legally inaugurated. And is like,
that Trump was the 16th
it's everything that's happening is invalid. And I'm like, you're not going to get anywhere with this belief. Even like, because we've all like, it's like money. Money, paper currency is worthless, except we all agreed that it meant something. And so it does. And so like, we've all accepted that history has happened and all these presidents since then have been presidents, and all the laws and legislation that have gone in, in there.
On top of that, we have all accepted that. On top of that, it's because it's how it is. Because that's
we just accept that something is the way it is, and therefore it is that way.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's like, So, I mean, I don't really get the point of like, you're not going to nullify 100 years of presidential history and actions.
It's not, I mean, they want to do that, yes, but it's just like, I think it's just a simple, like, basic, like, well, I know what I don't want to be true. And
and so this is how I can get there.
I'm going to turn away from that thing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to turn towards something that everybody else within the circle that I run in hopefully will agree with me. And then they do.
Right.
And it's great. And
we get enough people to accept this, then we can overthrow it. I mean, but that's how like coups happen. It's people like, another like overthrow the government, and then everybody just accepts this is the new government. And so like, that wasn't a legal thing, but we all accepted that's how it happened, so it's true now. And like, so it's the same thing. Even if the people were sworn in on different days, the fact that everybody in the world has accepted this was legal, then it's legal.
I mean, yeah. Also, we don't even need to have the argument, though, because it's just not based in truth. It's just not based in fact. And it's like, and it's not like, the problem is, like, even if you go into that argument with them, there's nothing you can say. There is, because they don't want your truth, which is the reality of accepting it. So there's no angle that you can come at reality with that will convince someone that doesn't want to accept it.
Yeah, if they're not going to meet you on a level of rationality and reason, then you can't reason with somebody. My last like example or whatever for this is, and I don't even have like a specific example, but I think about like, you know, Illuminati and New World Order and like Freemason stuff, like all the, you know, secret society, things like that, which, I mean, whatever, like I'm sure there is some group of people that gets together secretly and thinks that they're, you know, they plan their decisions, like they agree amongst themselves that they're going to, I don't know, vote this way or do this, whatever. I don't think it impacts as much as together, it does. Yeah. Like, I mean, but so like it isn't whatever. But I think about, so I mean, specifically the people that I know who are like the people I know with like the QAnon beliefs are very, you know, extreme right wing people. Yeah. And so like when they talk about like Illuminati and Freemasons and stuff like that, I'm like, okay, these are this. So all right, that's a thing, right? But on the other hand, you see, like from a political argument, I hear people talking about like, you know, founding fathers and the vision for this country and like strict interpretation of the Constitution and stuff like that. But so like George Washington is documented as being a Freemason and all this stuff. So like all these founding fathers that you hold in such high esteem are also linked to all these conspiracy theories and secret societies that you're against. So like, how are you mental gymnasticsing yourself into whatever truth you are believing? Like, because if any of this stuff truly happened, it happened with the origination of the country and goes way back and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, those are the same founding fathers that wrote the Constitution that you think is being destroyed by the left. And so, I mean, it's all crazy, which is what led into the conversation topic is like, why do people believe this? Like, what is the psychological, is there like a predisposition? I think profile?
you talked about it before we started recording for a second, which was that one aspect is what I said earlier, which is the people don't want to accept things as the way they are for various reasons. Right. And the other thing is what you said before we started recording, which was people want to feel like they're special and they're in the know about things. Yeah. That other people don't realize that our reality is reality, like how we see it, where, you know, we're being controlled by secret cabal of the New World Order, whatever conspiracy you want to pick. Mm-hmm. Not that all conspiracies aren't true, but most conspiracy theories aren't.
Right. Because there are certainly conspiracies and cover-ups and things like that. There are things like that,
and some of them are crazy. Yeah. But a lot of the big conspiracy theories that are propagated right now are a bit silly. Like one conspiracy theory I tend to believe is that Jeffrey Epstein was killed. That type of thing. Yeah. A lot of people tend to believe it, but that is a conspiracy theory because we don't have actual hard evidence.
Yeah, it's denied by, you know, the public by either journalism or the government or whatever that say it was suicide.
Yeah.
So
you know, that's what I think. It's a combination of a denial of reality and wanting of both the reality to be cooler and for you to be in the know.
Yeah.
And you to be special enough to realize, to have the vision of how things really are.
You're not a sheep, man. You have your own thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. You do your own research.
And you know who wasn't a sheep? Screamin Jay Hawkins.
Screamin Jay Hawkins. Seamless transition.
I mean, he for certainly was not a sheep. He did not go along with the flock in his choices.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have some extra stuff for Screamin Jay. That was a transition because I don't know where we were gonna go from there.
No, I don't know. Yeah, the only thing I would say is like I'm really fascinated by like the mentality of like conspiracy theories and cults. And like especially there's more info on like the psychology behind cults and how that happens and like like what goes into someone wanting to get into that or how they can fall prey to that.
Yeah, to put a pin in another last thing that I would say about this topic was one of the things I'm most concerned about is the idea that people at this point, more so, in my opinion, more so than previously, I thought some people had a warped view of reality. Mm-hmm. Some people that were personally, I felt that were in the far right fringe, mm-hmm. had a warped view of reality, mm-hmm. whereas some people in the far right fringe today, I feel, aren't having a warped view of reality anymore. It's literally not directly associated with reality at this point, where there is no need because you can just deny reality and just have your own thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With the QAnon thing, it's just you buy into it because a guy said it on the internet. Yeah. And it's just like, okay, what, really?
Yeah. So that's where I think that's where this merges with like conspiracy theories because I remember I think Kels shared one post one time that was like someone talking about like, well, Biden won, but I don't hear anybody going on social media and praising him and stuff like that. So like, we would do that for Trump. And I was like, the reaction was like, okay, but you shouldn't idolize or like the person, like the fact that you're so like in favor and like
I'm not team blue.
Right. Yeah.
Personally, I'm just a guy and I picked between a couple people on a ballot.
Yeah. He's like, he's not our leader. Like Trump became sort of and is still like a cult leader.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, that's what I was going with too, is that like, I'm interested in the idea of like, how are we going to deal with people that have bought into a sort of belief system based on nothing but comforting themselves. So it's just like cult deprogramming. I've been meaning to get into that idea, which I haven't looked into it yet. But I was just interested. How do you do that on a mass scale? I have no idea.
Because like before, people would, they're like on a commune and out in the middle of the, what's the desert in Arizona? Sedona? No, what's the, whatever. They're out in the desert and like not hurting anybody, all believing something about that's nonsense. But now you have like people like in society that are, following this teaching that's not true or something. It's not like
on like a global scale.
Abandoned the world. There's on a global scale. So how do you go about that?
And it's like, you can, it goes. It can go a gross way where you're like, what about a re-education camp?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, if you have all these things
but it's like I don't know what you do. Yeah.
That could be like ammunition for them to still believe it because they're trying to brainwash us from like tell it's like you have to be careful because you can very easily, like you said, take it in a way where it's like an internment camp or however far you go, but like at the same time you can't give them ammo for like
it's so hard to deal with. And I feel like nobody's talking about that as an issue, where I feel like it is a huge issue.
Yeah.
Like a really big, bad issue.
Yeah.
That nobody's talking about an idea. Like, I don't hear anybody's ideas on how to fix that.
Yeah. No, we're just like digging in more and more. And like, no one's just like, all right, but let's look at like anthropologically the theme of this. Like, what are we going to do as like the human species to to counteract the the break from reality that's happening.
Yeah.
And like get everybody back on track. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, one person who broke reality with his singing.
Yeah. Moaning and groaning.
Screamin Jay Hawkins.
Hey-o.
So yeah, I just have a few, like, these are like completely random, and I just didn't, for some of them I didn't have like a date on it, so I didn't know where to throw them into the story, that type of thing. So, you remember Screamin Jay Hawkins. I told a very long story that I thought was cool about him, and here's some more stuff. In the late 50s, so this is kind of really the very beginning of his solo career.
I like how you said you couldn't find a date for some of the stuff, and you're like, in the 50s.
Yeah. Well, a lot of things happen for him.
I know.
In the late 50s, the National Casket Association sent out a message to their members to not rent out caskets to Screamin Jay Hawkins. The idea being him using their caskets would harm their image. Like he was making fun of people being dead or something, because he would come out of it.
Are associated very closely with death, so no one is like thinking about your brand and be like, "Oh, I love them. Yeah, my dad died and used that." Like no one has positive emotional associations with the group, anyways.
Oh my god, yeah, it's funny when you think of like sort of the niche things that are manufactured, and like people think like, okay, National Casket Association, like we always say, out of the bed and into the casket, right, folks?
Yeah.
They have like their own like phrases and their own like way of doing things with caskets that nobody gives a shit about in the real world.
That's very funny. There's a graveyard down the road from where I used to live, and they would have sales on like plots, and so they'd have like this big yellow banner that just says like BOGO grave plots, buy one get one half off or buy one get one free, and you're like, wow. You don't think of the term BOGO with like graveyards. No one's, that's like shoes and that's fun shopping. That's not like, yeah, you're gonna die and so is your spouse. Buy 2 plots.
Yeah.
It seems very out of place.
BOGO, BYOB, casket.
Yeah, BYOC, big your own casket.
Yeah. And that is what Screamin Jay had to do for a time.
Yeah.
He, over time, built up a casket collection in his home.
That's kind of cool. I mean,
1990, he had 12 caskets.
Wow. What determined, I wonder, like, obviously, maybe you don't know this. Love to sit down with him at a seance or something and be like, yeah, why did you pick certain coffins to use for this show or this,
Yeah. Dropping the fact that you're like, well, I speak to the dead at seances all the time.
Yeah, so, I just don't want to make it a big deal. Can't drop that.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Make it.
Yeah. But yeah, that's that. I don't have anything more on that. It's just funny that there's a National Casket Association, because it's like, what?
Yeah, like why? Who is?
What needs to be nationalized?
Are they meeting and they're like, how can we get more people to die to use our caskets? Or like, what's the best material? If they were to be a zombie apocalypse, our caskets would keep the dead sealed inside. But I think this casket, it needs to be reinforced. Otherwise, they're going to break out and spread the plague.
Where are the conspiracy theories about Big Casket and what it's doing to our nation?
I did see an SNL skit. I mean, it's an old skit, but I watched it recently. It's back when Amy Poehler was on. But it was the like a funeral home service with this like group of friends, and like they were gradually killing all of them in order to make a profit on all of their funerals. Yeah, and it was just like, funeral homes killing people to have more business. Yeah. There's theories about that, huh?
I recently watched Bernie, the movie.
What was it?
Bernie.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, starring Jack Black. Do you know about this?
I know about it, but that's it.
It's a southern. He's a southern guy. Southern, like effeminate gentleman that is a great, like, I don't know, he's like a funeral manager or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just very charming or whatever. And he gets into this relationship with this widow, older woman, and he kills her or whatever. But it's just it's based on a true story. That's why I'm fine spoiling it.
Yeah. This has already happened. It was,
It literally happened. I don't feel bad about it. But it very much felt like this movie's kind of made for me. I like weird true stories, and I love Jack Black.
Yeah, Jack Black is great. Yeah, that sounds like a fun movie. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, and he's actually doing kind of a character in it, which he doesn't generally do.
Yeah.
It just is Jack Black, which is fun. But yeah, here's a quote from Screamin Jay that's just not really directly associated to an event. People think I'm stark raving crazy. Well, if that enables me to go to the bank, gentlemen, I want you to know that I shall always be crazy. It's a pleasure to be crazy. So there's that.
Sounds, just a quick little analysis. Sounds like he got a little defensive there. Because at first, I understand he's like, yeah, you know what? I'm maybe crazy, but I'm making money off of it, so it doesn't matter. And that would have been sufficient. But instead, he's like, I like it. I like being crazy. It's fine. I'm okay with it. It's a pleasure. Like, he's like, all right, you're getting style it down.
Well, I think his idea is like, hey, I'm getting paid to be crazy.
Yeah.
So fuck you. Yeah. Random factoid: he did some commercials for Sony in Japan.
Oh wow!
So, you know about like celebrities go overseas and do just like George Clooney will do a commercial in Japan, even though he would never do a commercial here.
Right.
That type of thing. Screamin Jay had a big enough career in Japan to do a commercial there. And like one thing that I kind of got across during my story that I didn't completely is that he kind of crossed paths with like everybody in early rock and roll. Like Paul Anka, who did Put Your Head on My Shoulder.
Oh yeah.
That one. He crossed paths with Frank Sinatra.
Hey, nice.
Ton of people. Tom Jones. That's not quite rock and roll, and it's not quite that early, but he has stories with all of these people.
Wow.
And here's the story that I picked out today. Like, I had all these notes before, but I was like, I heard this story in the documentary, but I couldn't nail down the details. And I nailed down the details because it's a great story. So, one of the people he had a run-in with was the Drifters, which was like a doo-wop group.
The White Christmas is a pretty popular... they did more than that, but the Drifters' White Christmas is a...
Yeah, they, a lot of groups in the late 50s, or maybe early 50s too, but late 50s and early 60s were like the sort of like a barbershop quartet style setup where there's like a baritone, there's a soprano singer, blah, 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 blah. Drifters were one of those. They were a doo-wop / R&B type of thing. And they were hanging around in Screamin Jay Hawkins' dressing room. I believe they're on the same show or whatever. And they're getting drunk on booze that was meant for Jay. And Jay was like, I paid $300 for all this. I should get some of it.
Yeah.
And
especially if that's crucial to his performance.
Oh, yeah. Which, he drank usually early in his career. He drank in order to get into character, basically. And they were like, well, what do you want, Jay? And he was like, when you pass the coffin, jam this bunch of paper into the lock. And he he ripped a matchbox in half or something and crumpled it up and said, jam it into the lock. Gotta do that. And because when they leave the stage, I believe, I'm just guessing this based on the whole story. When they leave the stage, they'll jam it into the lock, and later it's showtime, or maybe it was before. Whatever. idea is, hey, drifters, jam this shit into the lock. That's all I want. You're drinking all my booze, you pieces of shit. Whatever.
Yeah.
Later it's showtime. And Screamin Jay is wearing a white outfit, and he gets into the coffin, and he shuts it. And he gets rolled onto the stage while the band is doing a drum roll and a big introduction, right? Mm-hmm. So he's in the coffin, band's doing the big introduction. And then it's time for him to get out of the coffin to do his present himself during the introduction.
Right.
But he can't, because the coffin's locked. And he had no way to unlock it himself.
Mm-hmm.
The drifters hadn't jammed the paper in the lock. And here's a quote from him. I thought, you're gonna die. Then I tried to count for 3 minutes. That's all I had air in there for. I began to pray. I started crying. My bladder broke. I peed all over myself.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, I was that scared. My bowels broke. Caca. I shit all over myself.
Oh, my God.
In this white African thing. Yeah. He's talking about his outfit.
Yeah.
And something said, don't give up. Do something. The coffin was sitting on a platform. Maybe if you can knock it off. And that's exactly what I did. And that's the quote.
So he rocked it off to break it.
And so he kept rocking the casket until it fell off the platform. And when it hit the ground, it broke apart because it was like a theatrical coffin. It wasn't an actual coffin. And the band started laughing at him because he stood up having pissed and shit himself in white clothing.
That is horrible. That is so bizarre and so horrible. But I have to ask, if this was a theatrical coffin, or even if it was a real coffin and he was being used this way, why would they put a lock on it?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it was a shitty coffin, but he said it was like a theatrical coffin.
Yeah. I mean, either way, if they're gonna create it that way, why would it have whatever?
But yeah, Jay decides he's going to get even with the drifters. So, here's a quote from him. When I got to the right wing, I imagine of the theater he's referring to. Mm-hmm. When I got to the right wing, Charlie Thomas, one of the members of the drifters, was doubled over. He was dying with laughter. And then I gave him a straight BAM! And he does a punch motion in this documentary that I'm watching. Right there, right quick. Then I went for Doc, and Doc hit the stairway. But as he went to turn, I put my foot out and tripped him. He fell right on his face, and I took his head and I bashed it into the pavement.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, I'm finished with you. I've got to get to rest. I wanted to get upstairs to get my clothes off so I could take a bath because I smelled like shit. And he had later found the paper that he told them to jam in the lock basically on the ground, right where he gave it to them, basically.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
He beat up some of the drifters.
Yeah. What a legacy.
Yeah. He shat his pants and beat up some drifters. But yeah, that was a particularly funny story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny though that he was so panicked.
Yeah, I mean,
because he did that so often, but maybe it was an early one. It wasn't very clear when this happened.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think after a while someone would come check on him.
Yeah, I'm sure it would have happened, but it's just I bet a minute and a half in there, knowing that
seems like a long time.
Feels like a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's I just got a couple more quotes from him, and that was kind of the big bang that I was going to leave this on, but I still got a couple quotes.
Yeah.
So here's a quote. Monique's my 5th wife. First time I married a black girl from America. It didn't work. Second time I married a Filipino girl from the Philippines. That didn't work. Third time I married a black girl from Guadalupe, which are French islands. Next time I married a Japanese girl from Tokyo. And he looks like he realizes something in the documentary. And he's like, oh wait, there's 6 girls. Next time I married a French girl. And then last marriage is Monique, African. I've forgotten about a couple wives.
Gracious.
So, there's that.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I can't imagine just like having such a flippant attitude towards like, I mean, I understand relationships, but I feel like if you're going to marry somebody, then like, I mean, it's a little more serious and less forgettable, but I don't know. I mean, that's just me.
I mean, yeah. I don't think he's trying to recall like all of their names or whatever. He's just like, when he has 6 marriages, you have 6 different pieces of information. Sometimes you get them mixed up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you ever try and think 6 different things at the same time? Like alternate between the thoughts? It can be difficult.
It's pretty tough. Yeah.
But anyway. So here's the last quote. It's more serious. America wants to be able to control the blacks. If they can't control you, they will destroy you. And they tried to destroy me on 5 different occasions. They want to control your money, your personal life, your home, your business, the banks. If they can't control you, they will slowly destroy you. And if that's not enough, they'll bring in the Ku Klux Klan and they will destroy you quickly.
What insight.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, that's terrifying to think. Yeah. I mean... Ooh.
Yeah, and he was in France talking to a French reporter at the time he was saying this.
Yeah. I mean, it's shocking to think about like that. Don't get ahead of me on this because it's gonna sound ignorant at first, but it's shocking to think like at that time that seemed like such a reality. But like here we are, however many decades later, and we're still seeing things like this happening. So like
yes, you say I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
it also feels like at in the 50s or whatever, it feels so long ago or whatever, and it feels like a different world.
Right.
And in a lot of ways it is.
Yeah.
And even within the like horrible racist structure, it's different, but it's still horrible.
Yeah.
He definitely had insight. He was a smart guy. He was a smart guy.
I mean, he experienced it, so.
And he beat up the drifters because he shat himself in a coffin.
That's a good. I like that like logical flow to that. It's like he did this because of this, but it's like how are they connected? But yeah, that's good.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. A lot of people, Screamin'. A lot of people know I Put a Spell on You not even from Screamin' Jay's version. Like, Creedence Clearwater Revival has a popular version.
Yeah, it's in
which is
the what's the movie with the Sanderson sisters? The very famous.
Yeah, Bette Midler sings it.
Yeah.
In a scene. And yeah, that's a hugely famous one. The Creedence Clearwater Revival one, I think, is good. Mm-hmm. But it's not close to as cool and interesting as Screamin' Jay's version.
Yeah.
Nothing will compare to it, in my opinion. But a ton of people covered it. But yeah, mad respect to Screamin' Jay Hawkins. And yeah, that's all my Screamin' Jay stuff.
Nice. All right. No break for this commercial. Just keep listening. Non-stop. Commercial-free podcast. So I talked. I mean, obviously,
this commercial-free podcast brought to you by Kellogg's.
Yeah. By Frosties, or whatever the UK version was. No.
Black Mirror.
Yeah, so I mentioned in the episode that like this would be what I talked about. So, but a little bonus in case you heard that and you're like, okay, that's not that interesting, and then you're like didn't tune into this. If you did stick around, got some extra juice to share. So I talked about nitroglycerin, the development of nitroglycerin, which is a military grade explosive that the subject of my topic, his name's David Hahn. He ended up creating it in his own home lab. I mean, it had already been invented in the 1800s, but he was able to create it at age 12 or 14. Yeah, like it's crazy that was a thing.
Yeah.
But nitroglycerin is pretty interesting, and so it was originally created by an Italian chemist named Ascanio Sobrero in 1847. And he created it. He knew it was going to be very dangerous as an explosive, but it was not adopted commercially for commercial use until it was used by Alfred Nobel, who we all know for the Nobel Prizes. So he experimented with safer ways to handle it. He was interested in explosives. And he became more interested in it because his brother, Emile Oscar Nobel, and a few other people working at the factory that his family owned was killed in an explosion trying to handle nitroglycerin. And so Alfred Nobel was like, all right, we got to figure out a safer way to do this. So, yeah, Alfred Nobel. What do you know anything about him?
No.
You just know the Nobel Prizes?
Yeah, mainly the Nobel Peace Prize. I know that there are other ones, but...
Yeah, Nobel Peace Prize, right?
Yeah.
So, Peace Prize. Okay. Alfred Nobel was basically an arms dealer. And he manufactured nitroglycerin for use in World War I and World War II. And he was convicted of treason because he sold explosives to Italy during the World Wars. And so he was originally French. He
was feeding the moose, right? Is that Mussolini times?
Yeah. So let's see. He was accused of high treason against France by selling ballastite, which was used for it was nitroglycerin was used in this. It was other explosive or other concoctions mixed in, but it was like an upgraded dynamite.
Yeah.
So he had to move to Italy and lived in Italy. And he lived there until he died a few years later. Wartime manufacturing, arms dealer, explosive trader, known for the Peace Prize. But it's pretty interesting how that came about. So when one of his brothers, so Alfred Nobel, he had like 8 siblings and only 3 of them survived, like through childhood. 1 died in the factory explosion. And then his other, which I'll pull up his name here. Oh, wrong thing. Here we go. His brother, his name was Ludwig, and he died when he was visiting Cannes, which is, it's a French place. So his brother died, and a French newspaper accidentally published an obituary for Alfred Nobel. This is the guy we're talking about, Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah. So he was still alive and kicking, his brother died, and they mistakenly published an obituary for him, even though he was still alive. And it was a pretty horrible obituary. And it quote, condemned him for his invention of military explosives, and is said to have, so he was Alfred Nobel, who was a genius chemist, and he had like hundreds of patents. I think he had like 151 patents, and he was credited with development of dynamite. And at the time, the dynamite and things that he was responsible for creating were used against civilians instead of in war, but against civilians. So violating, peace conventions and stuff that we have now, like this type of thing is what led to us to have like accords and Geneva Convention and stuff like that. That like protect civilians in war. And the obituary even called him the Merchant of Death. And the article said, the Merchant of Death is now dead, and said Dr. Alfred Nobel became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before, died yesterday. So pretty harsh.
That is a funny situation though, to have your obituary published before your death, and then it's like a negative review.
Yeah. So it was actually this condemnation and this that led him to change his life. And he was like, this cannot be my legacy. He was like so distraught, and he was like, this cannot be how I'm remembered. And so
he was visited by the ghost of Christmas future. Basically.
Exactly. This is the Scrooge, right here. But I so real quick, just want to say, like, it's not entirely altruistic, because it's not like he just wanted to help people. He was like, I don't want to be remembered this way. So I don't know if it was for his own ego or if he was actually upset.
That's good enough, though. Who gives a shit?
That's good enough. He, he for whatever reason, he tried to do better things, and so if he had bad intentions,
do charity because it makes you feel good, that's fine. I don't care.
That's true. That's very fair. I'll give you that. So he was like, so he came up with the Nobel Peace Prize situation, and his family did not know, and so it wasn't until he died that his family realized that he had left all of his wealth. Well, not all of it, but a lot. I mean, he did provide for his family, but most of his wealth was to go on to fund the Nobel Prize Awards. And so he came up with these, to honor inventions, is awarded for eminence in physical science, chemistry, medical science or physiology, literary work. And then the fifth is to be given to the person or persons that society that renders the greatest service to the cause of international fraternity in the suppression or reduction of standing armies, or in the establishment of furtherance of peace congresses. So that's the Peace Prize, was to like whoever can help make the world more peaceful.
It is funny though that he didn't have like any view of himself. You know what I mean? He didn't have any view of himself, because obviously he's doing all this shit. He's providing
he had
so much
no awareness
to so many people. Like how could he not see that? But it's just like he has to see his own, like, people reflecting and being like, good, he's dead type thing, before he's like, oh, maybe people shouldn't say that. That would be bad.
And so it's that was pretty interesting to me, because like when I was reading, I was just like, oh, Alfred Nobel. And I just like happened to click on his article on Wikipedia just because I was like the little nitroglycerin thing. I was just like, I don't exactly know what nitroglycerin does, so let me just click on this to make sure in case it comes up in the podcast. And then it was like Alfred Nobel. And I was like, oh, I know that name. Is this the same guy? And then it's just like wartime criticism, manufacturing arms. You're just like, what? High treason. And you're like, was this the same guy? And so that was so crazy to me to think that, like, I mean, what a twist that led to him. It's weird that they published an obituary for him anyways, and that he read that, like, how shocking. But yeah, like, what a wake-up call for him. Yeah. And then the fact that, like, his family, like, they didn't really know it. He didn't, like, advertise it so much. He just, like, on his death was like, this is what we're doing. And it was, so it says, one thing I read said that it was At the time, let's see, right now, or sorry, in 2012, his trust is worth about 472 million US dollars, and that is about double what initially he had put in, accounting for inflation. So, he didn't put 200 million in at the time because, inflation, so it would have been significantly less, but the equivalent of like 200 and some million dollars to go to this trust. Yeah. I think I don't know. I mean, looking at he developed all these things that were used for horrible things, and that's bad. But at the same time, I think I think that he genuinely, I know nothing about him, so don't think that I'm not defending him, or I'm ignorant about the details of his life. If somebody has read a biography about him and they know way more about this,
guess based
but
on the
to my best guess is just he really just he was a scientist and he loved what he was doing, and if he was developing all these things and he was 18 for some of his studies when he started creating having patents. And
David Hahn was 13, so fuck
yeah. True. And he helped design an ironclad battleship for the Union Navy during the American Civil War, and he did blasting caps and gunpowder and stuff like that, and detonators. He did all that, but I think a lot of it is just if the government or whatever or whoever is I will fund your research, he's gonna take what he can get, So it doesn't. I feel like the vibe I got. So this is my best guess, my interpretation, unlimited knowledge, is that he just wanted to do science, and he just whoever was paying him, he didn't really think that much about it. He was just yeah, they're funding me to create the dynamite. So
yeah. He went with the flow, and people rewarded him for doing what he was doing.
Yeah, and so that kind of reflects back on what we were talking about with record labels and stuff. You get hired, you want to be an artist and you want to pursue your own things, but you're at you're in a contract with whoever, and that sucks. And there's I don't know. So.
Except you have no idea the artistic merit of his scientific pursuits.
Right.
He might not have had any huge inkling to go one way or the other. So,
yes. I will say, he was obscenely rich. They got into oil companies and obviously wartime profiting. But he was issued over his lifetime 355 patents internationally, and by the time he died, he had established more than 90 armament factories. Although he was generally a pacifist, by all reports, but he made money and was very smart and business savvy and a genius with chemistry, and so.
I don't know. Still having armament factories?
Yeah, but also this is during World War I and World War II. It's everything was geared towards even. But anyways, he did sold some things to the wrong people and all that. But so not defending that, But anyways, to end on I think is that's pretty weird information. But end on a little bit of a weirder note, talking about nitroglycerin. That was the bonus. Because I said I'd talk about nitroglycerin. So, you also got to hear about Alfred Nobel and the weird Peace Prize, how that came about. But nitroglycerin, as I said, commercial grade explosive. Well, it is also used medically. More chemistry stuff. Basically, it works as a vasodilator, which means it helps if your blood vessels are constricting and you have limited blood flow or circulation, or your heart is having to work very hard, it just helps open up your blood vessels so blood can flow smoothly. Your heart doesn't have to work so hard, and it takes a lot of pressure off of your circulatory system and your heart and lungs. So you get like more oxygen to your extremities and whatever, improved blood flow.
It's why I snort nitroglycerin every morning.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's available. Exactly. It's available in tablets, ointments, or you can do it intravenously.
Or snorting.
Snorting. You can crush it up and snort it. There are sprays that can be done, like you spray it under your tongue, called sublingually. They have patches for it. Like they have nicotine patches and they have nitroglycerin patches. So lots of different uses, and the fact that it's like used as an explosive and it's unstable and volatile, you can use it to bring more stability to volatile substances, but also it's used to like increase circulation and reduce the like effort. Like it makes your heart like more efficient and not have to work so hard.
Brings more stability to the volatile substance known as your heart.
Yeah. So it seems so weird that like I want to know first of all how that was discovered. They're like, hey, this can blow stuff up. What happens if I stick it in your bloodstream? Like, yeah. I don't know how that was done, but so there's a section on Wikipedia about industrial exposure, so your body can build up an immunity or a dependency on nitroglycerin. So if you take it for extended periods of time or in high doses or whatever, your body can become basically immune to the effects of it, and you become more dependent on it. It can actually, like when withdrawal symptoms can actually kill you. So, because it affects your heart, because your heart becomes so used to not working hard and whatever. I don't know how all the science behind it, but basically like then you cut off supply to it and your heart is like kicked into overdrive. So yeah, withdrawal from it can be fatal, but something interesting, for people who work in a nitroglycerin manufacturing facility,
which is most of us. Yeah.
It was what?
Which is most of us.
Right, yeah. I mean, most of you kind of are familiar with this. There's actually a phenomenon called Sunday heart attacks and Monday disease. So basically, people who work 5 days a week in the factory, they're like absorbing nitroglycerin into their skin and they're breathing it. And because it can be administered so many different ways, their body is taking it in and consuming it all week long. And therefore, they're feeling the effects on their heart, which is basically your heart has an easier job. And then when you go away on the weekends, you're drastically cut off from nitroglycerin, and so your heart and your circulatory system kicks into overdrive, and people have heart attacks. Like I said, called Sunday heart attacks. That's what they call the phenomenon, where like the effects of nitroglycerin wear off and you have a heart attack, wow. Which is crazy to me. And then they also have the Monday disease, where you go back to work and you become sick because you're re-exposed suddenly to this like super high intake of nitroglycerin, and so you're very quickly you experience the vasodilation, so your heart rate like goes faster, you get dizzy and a headache, your circulation is just like everything, your blood is flowing too quickly through your veins for your body to keep up with.
I was at first going to ask this as a joke, but maybe it is true. Is that where you come down with a case of the Mondays comes from?
I do not know, but I very well could see that being the case. It doesn't say that. It doesn't mention that. But like, I mean, I think like if my best guess would be like the case of the Mondays is like sort of like the blues about having to go back to work. But
yes,
like,
that's what.
But yeah, right. But like the sick Mondays, like having this very well could have perpetuated or like given that not the stereotype, but like that imagery
association.
Or that, the association for that would become stronger, because especially like I said, in World War I and World War II, like I mean, you think about like Rosie the Riveter, you think about like how all these like, women at that time who were, I mean, like housewives, like going into work in factories and like helping produce things for the war and the war effort. And like, it was very much like a national rallying thing. Like everything we're doing, we're working for the war. And so at that time where like nitroglycerin would become manufacturing like become huge, that very well could have like been a very common experience, especially since I don't know if this was in America. I think in the UK, I'm not exactly sure, but there were quite a few instances of like nitroglycerin like accidentally exploding like in transportation and stuff like that. So they introduced a law where you had to only produce it, like you couldn't transport it, you had to produce it wherever you were going to use it. And so like if you're creating these bombs and stuff like that, you have to open up plants and manufacturing all over the place, because you can't just like have one big hub of manufacturing that ships it out all over the world to make bombs. So like all with factory increase and with everyone kind of pitching in to, for the war effort, very easily could see how that case of the Mondays started to include, like, became more popular or more serious with things like that. But that's speculation on my part.
Sure.
But yeah, I thought that was weird. Basically, guy that invented the Peace Prize was a war criminal, and the nitroglycerin people that work in factories like have heart attacks on the weekends and get sick when they go back to work.
Yeah. Factory workers had a rough job. The Palladium girls.
Yeah.
Then this.
Yeah. It's not what they sign up for. That's why you gotta unionize, folks.
Yeah.
I'm gonna unionize this podcast.
Sure. This is a union podcast.
Yeah.
Podcasters Union.
Yeah.
We're, of course, a part of.
Yeah.
We're the only people in it.
But, yeah. But we were equal footing and equal say in what happens.
I mean, me a little more than you, but
definitely.
We have equal footing, but I have like more equal footing.
More equal footing than me. So, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but was there anything more to just any other, like, were you gonna go through weird merit badges you mentioned?
No, I did talk about that. I didn't have time to look more into that, but
that's fine. Fine.
If I find something funny about, I might post it in the Discord, like a link. I'm sure there's a record of it, because if it existed, it would have been a list that I found and not compiled myself. And so if I find that web page, I'll put it in the Discord.
Okay.
In addition to the speech from Colin and the
sure, yeah. From Colin and Bandersnatch, the Spoils of War episode that is coming out around this one, either before or after.
So when that one comes out, we'll post in the Discord, and
yeah. So I believe that's our episode, right?
Yeah.
So with that, you can check us out on all of the locations podcasts can be found, but also we're on Twitter at War of the Weirds. We have a Discord. You can find it through the Twitter has a link. Don't worry about it. You can click the link. It'll work out.
Yeah.
Twitter.com/War of the Weirds, or type in War of the Weirds, whatever.
Yeah.
You already found the podcast. We already appreciate you for listening.
Yeah.
And we will see you on the next one.